So now we'll go on to the continued presentation of the 2023-2024 mid-biennium update. Back to Eric and Caitlin.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Next slide, please. Tonight, we continue the mid-buy budget review with an overview of proposed changes to the city's general fund. Per the budget calendar, we have 2 more dates scheduled for budget items, with a budget ordinance scheduled for adoption on December 4th. The schedule provided the opportunity for public input at 2 public hearings, one on October 16th and one earlier tonight. Community members can continue to provide public comments and correspondence throughout the budget process. Next slide. The purpose of this mid-biennium review is to address budgetary items that need modification and by state law must be completed no sooner than September 1st and no later than December 31st. In other words, this update is an incremental request to amend the 23-24 adopted budget. Proposed changes consist of technical adjustments for both revenues and expenditures, and expenditure enhancements for new opportunities and to meet needs. As part of this update, the remaining COVID-19 pandemic recovery funds have been allocated. In addition, the general fund remains balanced with the use of the city manager's reserve, and overall adequate reserves remain for the budget period. Next slide. Regarding the general fund, staff is recommending an overall increase in revenues for both fiscal years 2023 and 2024. In 2023, the increase is 1.05 million, and in 24, the increase is 891,000. In general, the revenue changes are based on current fiscal conditions and trends and recognition of grant awards and enhanced programming. Next slide. In 2023, the revenue increase is primarily led by sales tax and intergovernmental revenue. The sales tax increase is based on the current trend of collections. The increase in intergovernmental revenue is led by an increase in criminal justice funding from Washington State and several grant awards. In 2024, the revenue increase is primarily led by sales tax and anticipated revenue related to the return of summer day camp for youth and in the amount of 192,000. The return of this camp was approved by council earlier this year. Next slide. Regarding expenditures for the general fund, staff is recommending an overall increase in the amounts of 509,000 in 2023 and 6,699,000 in 2024. Compared to the prior presentation, there is a 2024 change in professional services in the amount of 70,000. The additional funds will cover the increase in the rate or fee for home detention services by the city of Renton. Next slide. As illustrated by this slide, the increase in 2023 is primarily driven by one-time expenditures related to grant awards and the city's COVID-19 pandemic recovery funds. Next slide. Like 2023, the increase in 2024 is primarily driven by one-time expenditures related to the city's COVID-19 pandemic recovery funds and grant awards. In addition, there are other key expenditure drivers related to ongoing expenditures and enhancements. In regard to payroll, the increase is led by the following changes. Increasing the amount of 156 for intermittent staff related to Park Summer Camp. It is anticipated that revenue from the summer camp will offset the related expenditures. Increasing the amount of 112,000 with a 1-year extension of the temporary assistant planner to the end of 2024, and increase in the amount of 70,000 for the conversion of parks maintenance assistants to a one-time employee. Regarding other services, the increase is led by insurance in the amount of 669,000. This is the insurance fee by the Washington City's Insurance Authority, otherwise known as WCIA. According to WCIA, this increase is due to an overall rate increase in the liability rate and individual member claim losses. Next slide. Regarding professional services, the increase is led by the COVID-19 pandemic recovery projects. These projects are considered one-time expenses and are covered by the associated funds. Other highlights include the following. Grant-related expenditure in the amount of $275,000 for the police department's co-response team. $90,000 for our new website to replace the existing website due to several technical and customer support challenges. An increase in the amount of $80,000 to extend the contract related to the Community Connectors program. The contract will be extended in 2024 while staff work to bring the management of the program in-house. And $60,000 for consulting services related to franchise fee negotiations. As part of this process, it is likely the cost will be reimbursed by the franchise companies. Slide 10, next slide, please. The COVID-19 pandemic recovery projects are highlighted on this slide. The total amount of these projects is $4.3 million. As you know, these projects were approved by the council last year, and staff is currently making progress on the implementation action plan. Next slide. Other highlights regarding professional services include the following. Increase in King County District Court cost in the amount of $215,000 due to the return of the pre-pandemic activity level. Increase in score for jail services in the amount of $182,715 due to the city's activity level. This is calculated based on the average daily population number over a 3-year period. As shared earlier, increase in home detention services in the amount of $70,000 due to a higher rate. The new rate increased from $14 to $36. Again, this is the only change from the prior presentation. Increase in the amount of $44,000 to transition the city's financial system to the cloud. The transition will lead to less labor effort for both finance and information systems related to system updates, small and large. Increase in the amount of $40,000 to increase funding for nuisance and abatement activities. Increase in the amount of $39,000 for the services related to the park summer camp. Again, it is anticipated that revenue from the summer camp will offset the related expenditures. Increase in the amount of $27,500 in professional services for federal lobby activities. A new lobbyist was selected due to the retirement of the former lobbyist. And an increase in the amount of $5,135 for human services programs due to the annual adjustment in the per capita rate. The rate is increasing from $8.50 to $8.89. This is an annual adjustment for the financial policies. Next slide. With this update, the estimated ending reserve balances for the general fund remains adequate for this budget period. In both years, the city meets the 20% minimum operating reserve and maintains funding for the construction of the maintenance facility. In addition, a new reserve is established to fund COVID-19 pandemic recovery projects. As you can see, the city manager's designated reserve is used to balance the budget by funding both one-time items and ongoing expenses. The use of this reserve for ongoing expenses is not sustainable in the out years. It will be key to continue the discussion on considering new or enhanced revenue sources to address the general fund's revenue gap. Next slide, please. Regarding the financial policies, one change is proposed. Staff recommends increasing the per capita rate from $8.50 to $8.89 for the human services programs. This annual adjustment to the per capita rate is based on the city's financial policies and is led by the Consumer Price Index factor. This change is included in the financial policies that are attached to the agenda bill. Next slide. This concludes the presentation on the general fund and financial policies. Are there any questions?
Deputy Mayor.
I have a question specifically about the insurance. The WCIA increases to their insurance. Can we, I don't know if we can go back to that slide, but the number I think was $669,000. What was our biennium expenditure on insurance last biennium?
I'll look that up. Caitlin will look that up.
It's 163 out of 180.
Just the adopted.
Yeah, okay. Insurance adjustment, $669,600. And
For a little bit more context that I shared at the original presentation. And then if I may need to hand it off to the city attorney, Newsome, for additional details. But they disclosed that there have been significant draws on the authority's reserve level
across the authority.
in the current risk environment.
Okay.
This is now a challenging expense for staff to forecast year to year.
Because the authority's pool keeps paying out more than they're expecting to pay out.
Plus,
If I could just on that, it's not only payments, but it's just expenditures or costs of defense. And it's costing more for them to buy coverage. So as a
Okay.
result, that is also translating into an increased cost that's
So-
being given to each of the members.
And that jumped to 669,000 from, I know you're pulling it up.
for this year's budget, the amount was $500,000.
Okay.
So we're adding 669, so over $1 million.
Wow.
Other questions? Councilmember Sarah.
Yeah, I'm, where is our contract with Discover Burien? I'm all of a sudden hearing about it a lot and I'm gonna have questions about it. Are they in here or are they part of the budget?
Are you referring to the current contract in regard to the homeless situation?
Yeah,
So so funds are available in the city manager's budget that were budgeted. So that's where the cost.
okay, so they come out just out of the city managers. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.